Well, hello. I'm really glad today to have the opportunity to speak with Gnaeus Cornelius Lentulus. Before I do, though, I would like to say thank you to Decimus Aurelius Ingenarius, who very very nicely has agreed to host us because I don't have the technical capabilities yet to host other people. Anyways, Lentulus, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and being interviewed today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
I'm very glad. Just to let the viewers know, we actually met back in November when I was visiting Budapest and I was going on a Roman adventure for a week. And we had a really lovely lunch. And and also he took me to a Roman site. So I asked him questions then. And some of the questions I asked them will probably come up again today. But yeah, I'm really glad. And to begin with, can you please state your titles and also brief description of what they mean?
Well, first and foremost, my position in Nova Roma is that of a questor or quaestor, which is corporation-wise deputy director and treasurer of the corporation. We are 8 of them, so it's not a very special or distinguished position. I'm one of 8 men and women. And in general, quaestors can help in any aspect of the running of Nova Roma. So a quaestor is a jolly joker, and it's in the middle of the hierarchy. So I can be used for anything that is useful for Nova Roma. And this is my constitutional position. Otherwise, I feel some technical jobs in Nova Roma, which are really just technical, like Praefectus Rei Publicae Administrandi, which translates as prefect of the administration of the Republic, and it is essentially whatever the consuls want me to do. This is the right hand of the consul, of the consuls. Another position is Curator Rei Informaticae, that is curator of the informatic assets of Nova Roma. And in this capacity, while this is a responsible job, in this capacity, I am responsible for maintaining and managing the website of Nova Roma and its underlying databases, like the sensorial database. And it's a little bit more than just a minor technical position, but it is also subject to the control of the aediles, who are the supreme supervisors of the assets of Nova Roma, and of course subject to consular decisions and the decisions of the Senate. And my most special job in Nova Roma is that of the pontifex. I'm one of the pontifices of Nova Roma, the pontifices in classical pronunciation. And as such, we, the College of Pontiffs, are supervising and assisting all religious aspects of the Nova Roman life, the lives of the citizens in terms of public religious events and rituals. I believe that I should mention my role as an officer in the Nova Roman reenactment army, which is Centurio Hastatus Prior. It's a type of centurion or centurio who is a little bit a more elevated rank than plain centurion. If we would call the centurio a captain, which he essentially was, Centurio Hastatus Prior would be a mayor or major. How do I pronounce it? Major, because mayor is the head of a city. Major. So I'm a major in the Nova Roman army, which is of course translates in the context of reenactment, and it has nothing to do with the management of Nova Roma, but it is an important part of my life. Although recently I could only live up to this role in limited occasions. I served more than 15 years, I believe, in Nova Roman legions, but in the last 5 years, I almost had no duty in the reenactment army of Nova Roma because of certain aspects of my body. I regretfully became overweight in the last couple of years, and it's just lame when some man with a big belly goes around as a centurion. So until I lose some weight, as I shall, I will not feel military duties at least at maximum 2-3 times a year, and
Well,
usually within just internal events, not in public festivals.
in your defense, I do have to say that through the Corona crisis and staying at home and lockdowns and just less motivation to do things, a lot of people have gained weight. I mean, myself included. I think I put on about 12 kilos, and I've read some studies. Like the average amount of kilos that people have put on. So I mean, that's not something to be ashamed of. I mean, it happens across the board. Obviously, not to everybody. And, some people could go back to doing the gyms and they're motivated, but can't be too hard on yourself.
Well, I should exercise. I conclude by saying that.
Okay. So I'm wondering, when I and perhaps other people think of you, it's sort of the head of Nova Roma, but without being a consul. So not being the official head, but more of a figurative head. How long have you been active in Nova Roma politics and also in leadership positions?
Well, I joined in 2004. Yes, and I didn't immediately start with the so-called politics of Nova Roma. So it took me at least 1 year before I started to participate in the international aspects and in the administrative aspects of Nova Roma. And my first position was as a scriba, to the Aedilis Lucius Julius Sulla, which is not identical to the notorious Sulla of Nova Roma, but he was another person, an Italian, I think a heart specialist, a doctor by all means, but I even seem to remember that he was a heart surgeon, a very nice, decent fellow, and it was a pleasure to serve in his office, and I participated organizing some contests and quizzes, and I think ever since that year, 2005, I have participated in all edilition cohorts, edilition teams. So that is the most constant aspect of my participation in Nova Roma. And in terms of the real leadership, the decision making, it took many years. And to be honest, I never seek for that position. All I wanted from the first moment when I joined Nova Roma is to correct its so-called un-Roman elements, because when I joined Nova Roma, it was a very different place in terms of standard of historical accuracy. We had a lot of strange things that since that time were almost all corrected, and some of my very first posts to the international forums were about this, that I urged to change this or that and to correct the workings of it. And as I became more and more active, more and more magistrates took me on their staffs, and gradually I became so interwoven into the structure of administration in scribal positions that I was scribe or accensus or some kind of minor officer to all magistrates almost every year. Yes, I think literally to every single magistrate in every single year for a while. Of course, later some magistrates didn't took me in their staffs, then I choose not to apply for all of them. So it's not a rule or a law, a scripture that I said now, but this is how I became involved in the central decisions. Well, I just did my job, and it seems that people were content with it, and I didn't have any real position of power for a very, very long time. I think even for 10 years, in the first 10 years of my Nova Roman membership. And as members of Nova Roma know, there was a big internal conflict between 2015 and 2018. And during this struggle for saving Nova Roma, did it happen that I became sort of informal leader or leading citizen, or one of the leaders, that's better to say. And yes, I am aware that I am referred to as the head of Nova Roma, but I am not the head of Nova Roma. Senators and magistrates choose to listen to me often. That is a description of my position. It's
I'm
the
sorry.
magistrate's choice, and it seems that I suggest good ideas often, and this is how I determine the flow of the things recently. And anytime a magistrate chooses not to listen to my advice, then I'm just as a regular citizen as any of the others, or just like any other questors or scribes. So probably which made me a little bit more important in the leadership was that I led this fight to save Nova Roma, and it was an important responsibility. And during this fight, there were many connections that still determine how things are decided, but it can change any day.
Now you're referring to the so-called civil war with Caesar and Sulla. Obviously, they're Nova Roman individuals, but they take their names from famous people from the past. How did that evolve? How did they become dictator? Because I think that aspect is sometimes lost. So what was happening in Nova Roma before they became dictator?
Well, anything I will say is a little bit biased because I was so much opposing them. So now we are hearing from the person who opposed them the most. But I think that I can. My words are objective. This is what I believe. I confess that this is my sincere belief that I objectively describe this situation. So this is my take on what has happened. Sulla and Caesar, both of them liked the online aspects of Nova Roma better. This was their area of interest. This is where they felt home. We know that Caesar never shared his face with Nova Roma. We have never seen him on a photograph. We don't know who he looked like. So he was a person who didn't want to be involved in Nova Roma in the real life aspects. And Sulla's strengths were also in the online arena of Nova Roma. And Nova Roma was never intended to be an online group or an internet community. Our leadership functions online because it wouldn't be possible otherwise. It wouldn't be possible to have a fair share with everyone in Nova Roma if people in Australia, in Britain, in Hungary, in the USA or Canada would be excluded because the leadership would be composed of only people who can meet in a physical place, say it would be limited only to Rome, which would be the most appropriate place. Then only Italians and those who can afford to travel there for every session. Only those could take part in the leadership. So it's just the natural and unavoidable thing that the leadership, the central administration of Nova Roma is online, and people who want to discuss about these things, who want to share their opinions and meet their fellow citizens in discussions, they are also compelled to participate in the online forums. But Nova Roma is not an online community. It's a real life community. It was founded with people who met each other before founding Nova Roma. So it was not started as a forum. Maybe some people believe that Nova Roma was set up as a website and the forum was opened and that was the opening. No, it was formed by friends who knew each other, some of them for many months or years before founding Nova Roma. So it's a real life. It started as a real life community, and it's evolved as a real life community, but it always had an online aspect, which is unavoidable. So there is nothing wrong with that. But certain people like that online aspect better, and their voices were best represented by Sulla and Caesar, who had that kind of talent to dominate online forums. So they were very good debaters. They were good tacticians, how to convince people, how to have them on their side in online discussions. And as they came to power around 2011 or 10 or 11, they focused on that aspect of Nova Roma only, on the online aspect for the next 5 years. And they had tendency to focus also internally only. That was their other mistake, in my opinion, that they didn't like to make connections to other organizations, to other groups, to other communities. On the contrary, they were afraid that if they open Nova Roma to communities others outside, it would somehow diminish the status of Nova Roma. It would somehow deflect our cause. It would, it certainly would have lessened their role. So they didn't like it, and we in those years when they governed Nova Roma, we were very inward, and the official policy of Nova Roma with other organizations and groups and reenactment societies was cold. I wouldn't say hostile. No, officially we were welcoming and inviting them, but no steps, no gestures were made. There was no outreach. There was nothing in the central leadership of Nova Roma, which would suggest that Nova Roma is an open network who wants to embrace all people on the world who feel Roman. And this was manifested with us by a series of Senate decrees or internal resolutions of our board of directors that certain groups who were formed by disgruntled former citizens are unwelcome in Nova Roma. Not only unwelcome, they were almost outright forbidden to join, or if they joined, they should have make an oath, or I don't really remember at this moment what exactly, but some kind of disclosure that they will be loyal only to Nova Roma. And it was just over the top. It was really too much for most of the sensible citizens of Nova Roma who wanted Nova Roma to thrive and to be open and to fill the function and mission that it was founded for. So it was not only me, but a good many number of people who said that it's really enough when they proposed Senate decrees that made almost impossible any kind of cooperation with those people who are in organizations which were founded by ex-members of Nova Roma. And at this point, as we function according to the ancient Roman Republic, our structure is our government function as the ancient Roman Republic. We have tribunes of the plebs. A friend of mine, Publius Porcius Licinus, then tribune of the plebs, on my request, submitted a veto, an intercession against those Senate decrees. And in answer to that, Caesar proclaimed himself dictator and expelled the tribune and the other tribunes and other magistrates who supported the veto, which would have stopped these Senate decrees forbidding cooperation and friendly relations with these organizations, with these Roman groups. So it was a pretty terrible experience, because
Just a quick question. Did Caesar declare himself dictator, or did the Senate vote on him having the role of dictator?
well, they have created a mechanism for that, which allowed him, albeit illegally in real life macronational terms, but which he believed that it allowed him to declare himself dictator with the support of only one other man. Because in 2013 they passed a Senate decree which created the executive committee of the Senate, and it was created to essentially it was sold to the citizens that it was created to bypass situations when the board of directors is unable to function. For example, when there is a yearly report to be submitted to the state of Maine, USA, where
Because
we
it's a
are.
non-profit
And
organization.
if we have a CFO who is unable to function, or we have magistrates who are absent from their duties, the Senate Central Committee of the Communist Party, no, the Executive Committee of the Senate is empowered to bypass the regular procedures and to act instead of the board of directors. And these little four words were hidden in this decree, and they used this little clause in the decree to turn on the Senate committee, executive committee of the Senate on that day. And,
without a vote?
and this committee consisted of two members, Caesar and Sulla. So, and there was this wording that the executive committee of the Senate may act in the name of the board of directors. So, with a mutual agreement between Caesar and Sulla, they appointed themselves dictator, and magister equitum, that is dictator and vice dictator, because the magister equitum, as the Romans called it, the master of the horse, is the second man of the dictator, the right hand of the dictator. So they appointed themselves, in fact, really. So there was no normal style appointment here, but the proclamation of dictatorship.
Was Nova Roma, though, in a crisis? Because obviously, I mean, I've been a member of Nova Roma also since, I think, 2004. And, there are times when there's more people, there are times when there's less people. There have been times when, they have conventions and meetups, and then also less times. So what was the situation Nova Roma like when this happened? Was there some sort of a constitutional crisis, or were there no meetups, or what was going on in Nova Roma at the time?
Nothing, absolutely nothing. Caesar declared the veto of the tribune an emergency crisis. That was all the justification, which is absolutely nonsense, because he could just simply ignore the veto, or he he could pass a Senatus Consultum Ultimum to annul the veto. There were like 10 other options. But you must know that Caesar had a plan for Nova Roma. He has written a document about it, which is called Nova Roma Reborn, and he has written it. He had written it, I think, around 2009, maybe, or 8, and he was eagerly waiting for the opportunity to realize his program, which has just never came, and there were many people who didn't like at all his plan, and it was obvious that he would never be able to pass his program for Nova Roma through democratic means, and he needed some kind of special authorization to that. And I think when he saw this little, really just a minor political turmoil, nothing serious, that the tribune vetoes the Senate decree, he chose to fabricate out of it a crisis of Nova Roma so that he can be dictator. And he created this mechanism in 2013, so 2 years before that. And we have even a private email from Caesar from a private group where he was explaining to Sulla, or maybe to someone else, but he was explaining that he invented how to create a position of dictator in Nova Roma, which is legal in Maine. And it was written by him exactly at the time when this resolution was passed about creating the executive committee of the Senate. So it is very obvious that this was the means that he invented then, and this was exactly which was then used by him, and that it was a weapon, a concealed weapon, is obvious because the entire decree, anyone can read it on the website. It's still in force, actually. It's still in force, but we don't use it because it's against the regulation of the state of Maine, which is our hosting country, corporate hosting country. We still have the decree that there is a 2-persons executive committee of the Senate, which can decide in the name of the Senate. But it is un-Roman and it is illegal in Maine. So it's nothing. So it's very obvious that yes, what I wanted to say, that the wording of that decree, everyone can read it, doesn't seem to suggest that it is a mechanism to create a dictator. It sounds like something that is intended to be a mechanism to act instead of passive magistrates, to act instead of a passive curator aerarii, that is the CFO, chief financial officer. And nobody suspected then that it is a dangerous decree. Many people voted on it positively, who didn't suspect for what it was going to be used for. And when it was used for the dictatorship, then many people who accepted this decree in the Senate back then were protesting against it. So people didn't suspect that this is how it will be used.
I do want to just jump into the chats just for a second. And there's a person by the screen name Jortanos. I'm not sure what
Titus
the Roman
Domitius
name is.
Draco, Senator Titus Domitius Draco.
Okay. He says, so I guess he looked at the album CV, I believe it's album Civicum, how it's pronounced, and he says that you are 2 days my senior in Nova Roma. So you joined 2 days before me. Not years, not months, days, which is...
Then you, Decimus Aurelius, then you.
Yeah, 2 more, yeah, exactly. I remember back then I was doing an internship in Germany. And I just, I was just searching online for, I put in Germania just because, I wanted to see some of the Roman sites, and then I stumbled upon the Yahoo group. So I know it's a sort of a break from what we were talking about earlier, but I'm wondering, so where were you in July of 2004, and how did you stumble across Nova Roma?
I stumbled across Nova Roma in exactly on April the 21st, 2004. Yes, so many months earlier. And this was the first time I have ever used internet in my life. 2004, April
Whoa!
the 21st, because I wanted to celebrate for the first time the Parilia, the birthday of Rome. And back then I was not so experienced about Roman rituals, and I was still in the learning process. I was in the beginning of my university studies as a Latinist, so I needed to research. I didn't exactly know how to celebrate, what kind of rituals are needed. So my fellow university mates were talking about the internet, this new crazy thing. And in Hungary, as you know, Hungary was not such a developed country and still isn't such developed than, for example, Britain or United States or Germany. We had many years under the communist regime, and it showed in terms of being less advanced about internet, if I can say it this way. So that not so many people used internet, not so many people knew what internet was in those years still. Um, and there was some years, I think, from the 2000 that friends were suggesting to try out internet, and I always laughed that it's a silly new silly new thing I'm not interested in. I imagine that it's something like now TikTok is, for example, that people of my age are less inclined to subscribe to TikTok and to produce content there. It's just something for the high school age people. And I thought that the internet is also mostly for playing games and things like this. So I didn't consider it was so serious. But when I didn't find good resources in the library, and people said to me that internet can contain some very useful things, then I thought that, well, Parilia is today, and I still not sure what to do. I typed into Google in my very first action on internet that Parilia ritual or religio romana or something like that, and the page came forward when Italian members of Nova Roma were discussing about celebrating Parilia, and I just couldn't breathe from surprise that there is another person in the world who wants to make Rome a living thing again, who call themselves Roman, because I called myself Roman. But apart from 3 or 4 friends um, from high school, I never met anyone who would buy the idea as a sane thing. And I was very very happy. And immediately I selected some people. Some of them had their email address displayed on the page, and I started to write emails to them in Italian. And Marcus Maltinius Plautus was the first person who, who who wrote back to me, and he put me in contact with the Italian governor Perusianus, who was my first friend in Nova Roma, Marcus Julius Perusianus, Milko Anselmi, very nice man. He was here some years ago with his family, and we met in Budapest. He's still a member of Nova Roma, but he's no longer active, but still a Nova Roman, and he was the person with whom I discussed what is Nova Roma, how it is working, And then for a couple of months, I followed the main list, the Central International Forum. But I kept contact mostly with Italians because my English was very bad then. I knew Latin well, I knew Italian well, but my English was bad. And it was a little bit frightening at first. But thanks to Nova Roma, I learned English, and I cannot thank enough because it is very useful nowadays. Everything is in English, and basically if you know English, you know everything. You can access everything, you can communicate with anybody. So maybe if there was a Nova Roma, I would never learn English to speak fluently.
Yeah, I mean, I've traveled around the world, and obviously as native English speaker, it makes things much easier. Obviously, if you go to Japan or China, I mean, the chances of being able to converse in Spanish or French is pretty low, but normally with English, you can get by. Although I've been places in Argentina or in Japan where they spoke zero English. So I mean, there's still plenty of places like that. But when I went to Hungary, I actually spoke some German sometimes because it was interesting. That's not all, but especially outside of Budapest, there were people that spoke more. And this is not along the Austrian border. This is way further inland. They speak more German than English, which is also fine for me. I speak German, as it turns out. Yeah, but so back in 2004, I remember when way back then, there were definitely more of an Italian presence. Now you don't see that many Italians in the forums in the forum or in Discord. Do you know what happened, or the dynamic, or just they just kind of more stuck to in-person events rather than chatting online? Or did you know what happened in that respect?
Yes. Well, it's all coming from the same source, from the same events. When Sulla and Caesar came to power, this lasted 2 years approximately, and it was very turbulent. In the central forums of Nova Roma, the atmosphere was very nasty. Their strategy was to criticize the then leadership of Nova Roma as hard, as hurtful as possible, in order to discredit the system so that they can take over. And the result of it was an atmosphere filling in the central discussion groups of Nova Roma, which was very unbearable to many people. Insults, hurtful attacks, ad hominem attacks, bullying, character assassination, all kinds of verbal weapons that are imaginable were flying in the air every day. I think that there was every week someone wrote, "I am resigning from Nova Roma. I leave Nova Roma. It's a crazy place." It was so terrible because, for example, I loved Nova Roma so much. I believe that it is the most magnificent, most wonderful thing on earth. Really, I'm not making exaggerations. For me, Nova Roma is the best thing in the world. There is nothing better in the world than Nova Roma for a person who loves Rome, because Nova Roma is Rome today.
It's a home.
Yes, there is a Rome today, but it is not quite well in a good condition. I was there many times, and there are no doors, roof is missing. So today's Rome is not the ancient Rome type of Rome today. It's just ruins.
Yeah, so for me, I don't know if you had the same experience, but the first time I went to Rome, it was bittersweet. It was absolutely amazing to see, the Colosseum, the Palatine Hill, the ruins of the Forum. But there's also this immense sadness that it's like, there was the grandeur of Rome, it collapsed, and now there's just kind of like you know what I'm saying? Like the next best thing that Rome could produce was like the Renaissance era, like for instance, Baroque churches and paintings. but that really doesn't evoke much
It's not what
passion,
we want.
much yeah. And then you get into modern times, so the modern neighborhoods or buildings of Rome is very bleak. So I had an amazing but also bittersweet moment when I first
Exactly.
visited Rome.
Yes.
How
Yes.
was your experience, and when was that?
Well, very similar to yours. In fact, I saw so many photographs and read so many guidebooks about Rome before I went actually to Rome, that when I went there, I knew exactly which ruin is what and what street is what. So I didn't need even a guide. I just went there and I knew everything about everything. So it was not surprise for me, but it was this. My experience was beforehand, before I went to Rome. When I learned about how it looks like today, what kind of remains are there, that it's just not what I want. I have fallen in love with ancient Rome, and there are remains, magnificent, superb, amazing remains, amazing ruins. The atmosphere there is incredible. My favorite place on earth, and I love the modern inhabitants of Rome. I love the modern city of Rome, my favorite city on earth. But it is not my favorite city in all possible versions of Earth. It's not my favorite city in history. My favorite city in history is ancient Rome, and it is only vestigial in today's Rome. And it's not satisfying me to be citizen of the ruins. I want to be citizen of the living Rome, and Nova Roma means living Rome. Not living room, but living Rome, living Rome, today's Rome.
When was your first
And
visit
the reason why Cassius and Vedius and their friends named it Nova Roma, I'm not exactly sure, but for me, it is named Nova Roma out of humbleness, because we don't claim that we replace old Rome. We are not replacing it. We are admiring it uh, as a new community who are at the same time Romans, modern Romans, but at the same time just aspirant Romans.
Hmm.
We will only be real Romans when Rome stands again.
And
If it ever
we're not
happens,
talking about rebuilding buildings on the ancient forum, because I mean,
somehow, I'm not
yes and
talking how
no, because
exactly, but
nobody's saying, oh, we need to rebuild the Basilica Julia on the
well,
over the
if
ruins.
if I was in charge, I would rebuild everything. Make no mistake. My first thing would be, if I was in charge of the city of Rome, rebuild everything as it was. I know it's unrealistical. Don't mistake that. I'm not. I am talking kind of joking way, but to be honest, not really so much joking way.
My when I first went there, I thought, why don't they just rebuild everything right now? But then after I went there a few times, I got more of an appreciation for archaeology, and also for, being able to use the ruins as a tool to get more information about the past. So my way of thinking, it went from just rebuilding ancient Rome, the form exactly how it looked at the same spot, to probably it's best leaving the ruins as it is, as preserved and tourist friendly as possible, and then on another site rebuilding it, kind of like the closest thing is the movie set,
Cinecittà.
Cinecittà. I've been there. The only thing though is it's 1/3 scale, and some of the buildings look pretty authentic, and some buildings look a little bit Disneyland. So that's why I mean, Cinecittà is a very good taste of the atmosphere of Rome. But I think that, yeah, I think that, archaeological ruins shouldn't be destroyed to rebuild. So, like I said, but what do you think? I mean, if you had, I don't know, the money and the power, would you still be in favor of rebuilding on the ancient, like, forum, like the ruins, or would you now be in favor of rebuilding offsite?
Uh, it's a very complicated question, because it should never be a one-man decision to start
Well,
with. Of
just
course,
your opinion.
if you ask what my soul dictates, my clear answer is to rebuild in location, but it is a good option and the more likely alternative to rebuild it near Rome. And when we talk about the distant goals of Nova Roma, I often say that to build to build a city of Nova Roma, which is in our declaration, so it's our ultimate goal to build a Roman style actual place where people can live, or which people can use as an entertainment site, as an archaeology, experimental archaeology site, as a reenactment city, mock city, and for many things. And this should be in Italy near Rome, preferably, because that would really be a new Rome, which is close to Rome, near to Rome. The provenance of the place, the the terroir of the place would be the same. Like in case of wines, it would be the same terroir, the style of living. So that is a perfectly viable option to, for example, if we would be so rich like Elon Musk or Bill Gates, we could buy Cinecittà. It would be absolutely possible, and we could build
There's
there
no
Nova
point,
Roma.
though. So I've been to Cinecittà. Those are all facades. Those aren't.
No, I'm not
Almost none of them
speaking
are
about
actual
that
buildings.
place, that to use that place, just to buy the location,
Okay.
to destruct it and to build actual
Okay.
Roman. So not I didn't mean to actually use Cinecittà for Nova Roma, but the location is good because it's very close to Rome. It's actually part of the modern Rome municipality. So it would be a very good second Rome.
Now, there have been a few initiatives over my 18 years experience. One of them was buying a parcel of land in Texas, an uninhabited parcel of land. I don't think that came to anything, though.
No, well, it was really just a gesture to start. First of all, it was never really considered as a place where we would build something. Some
Well,
people,
not for Rome, but I remember somebody thought about maybe having a temple or an altar or.
yes, but it never was serious.
Oh, okay.
These were just talks, and nobody took it seriously because, come on, in the middle of the desert, no, it was absolutely. And it turned out that it was not a full ownership. We only had a very minor percent of ownership, as the Nova Roma Corporation only had a very minor amount of ownership in that piece of land, and it was later renounced. And so it was a nice gesture. I think Cassius, one of our founders, bought it, and it was for a while a good symbol of that we take our mission seriously, that Nova Roma wants to have a spot on earth in the world where we can build things. It signaled, it showed that mission, that dedication, but it was just a symbol, not the actual land that we want to use. And that's all.
So I want to get into Templum in just a moment, but I believe there were a few more ideas or suggestions. One of them, I'm not sure if Caesar and Sulla were involved or other people were involved, was having a community, I think in New Mexico or Arizona.
Arizona.
Do you know what happened?
Do
you know what happened with that initiative?
Nothing. It was just an idea again. It was a little less than the previous, because the previous the land in Texas, was it in Texas? So that piece of land was actually bought and owned by Nova Roma for a while, albeit only partially. But that idea of Sulla to create a living community of Romans in Arizona, Phoenix, was never implemented. It was just talks, and it met heavy opposition because many people thought that this is not what we want, because what he intended is just that people move in one building or in buildings next to each other, modern buildings, so that they can live and form a modern community of Nova Roman citizens who live together in an area, which is not very nice, but I wouldn't make it a prominent project of Nova Roma, because then people will think that we are not serious about Roman reconstructionism. It is just a nice project. Fellow citizens who are friends move together, live together. More power to it, but it is not the mission of Nova Roma. So this was opposed from many sides, and I don't know how seriously Sulla intended it, but nothing was done. Except that he indeed lived together with 5 or 6 citizens for a while. To his house, a number of citizens moved in. His
Was
friends,
this
supporters.
Oppidum? I believe there was a
Oppidum.
and that was the Oppidum, because I believe that they had some sort of hierarchy or structure, and also on the Nova Roma website they have a bit of the history about that group and some pictures.
Yes, but Sulla's house was not the Oppidum. Phoenix, Arizona is the Oppidum, and there lived about 10, 15 citizens there of Nova Roma in a time, and they enchartered themselves as an Oppidum of Nova Roma, which any citizens can do who live in the same city. They can register an Oppidum. They can found a local chapter of Nova Roma, and they can elect their presidents, their mayors of that Oppidum. And this is what Nova Romans living in Phoenix did. And they formed an Oppidum, but it was unrelated from Sulla's house. It was part of the Oppidum, but it didn't have the special function in it. It was a personal and private initiative of Sulla to invite some of his friends who were in need. And by the way, I admire and appreciate that side of Sulla, who was very nice to his friends, and he was a great people's person. So it was nice, but unfortunately they didn't get along with each other very well, and in a few years this community they went in as many directions as they were.
Now there's 2 current projects that has to do with land. One of them has to do with, I believe it's in Maine, and it has to do with an area for legionary reenactors.
Yes,
and then the other one is in Ukraine. Are there any other projects that I'm missing? Any other land projects? Because the ones that I've mentioned are the ones that I've heard about, but I don't know if other proposals or other initiatives when it comes to physical land have been mentioned.
Yes, there is one in Hungary as well, in the Danube band, near the city Vác, which is called today. It's in very, very initiate beginner steps. So I wouldn't talk about it because I don't want to claim things that will be, and then if it doesn't come to fruition, then it's just embarrassment. So, but the intention is there, and one of the Nova Roman citizens of Hungary, who is called Sextus Pompeius Maximus, if I'm correct, Sextus Pompeius Maximus, he owns land in the Danube curvature, which is in a place where an actual Roman fort existed, and he wants to build a Roman city there, just like Nova Roma. And he's our member, and he's a friend, and we regularly talk, and some other citizens from abroad, from other Nova Roman provinces are involved. So it's a serious thing, but it requires a lot of work, a lot of money. So who knows? We are considering starting it as a recreational camp for legions, for adventure, Roman reenactment adventure camps, that the participants can pay for a Roman adventure where they can live for 2 weeks as Roman legionaries and to discover that land in role play game style of missions. So this is not Nova Roma's. It doesn't belong to Nova Roma in terms of our serious missions and projects, but it is a serious project that we use that land for actual programs, events, sports, games, activities, educational and recreational activities. That kind of role play camp would be just an entertainment. So it is not the same than talking about Nova Roman magistrates or senators. We don't do it as an entertainment. These are jobs and works. But that would be entertainment. And if it works, then we could gradually raise it to a permanent camp from wood, then stone buildings, a temple, walls. So it is a slow project.
So I remember back in November, I also went to the Danube Bend, and I visited many different Roman sites, because there you could visit like little fortlets, or just a little tower. I remember one of them is right next to a gas station. So when my girlfriend was pumping gas, I was taking pictures of the Roman ruins, and so that's a very nice area, very steep cliffs, and like very picturesque. So I could really see how that's an attractive area. The only drawback is one has to have a car, and when it comes to international tourists, that is a bit of a drawback. But maybe there's some bus services, or the coordinator if there's an event. But you definitely, when I was there, it's obvious that you need a car to be in the Danube Bend area.
Mm-hmm. That is part of a city, but on the other side of the Danube. The city is one side of the Danube, and this location is on the other side, in where it's a natural habitat. So wood, trees. It's picturesque actually, and it is absolutely ideal because the city is 300 meters on the other side, but in this side it's full nature, and there are some ruins, and everything is absolutely magnificent. He had several offers from hotel chains who wanted to buy that land. So it is that good. It's a multi-million dollars worth land. So that's the other aspect why I'm keeping quiet about it, because so many aspects are involved that it can be anything and it can be nothing. But the person who owns it, Sextus Pompeius, he has been owning it since I think since the early 1990s, and he since that time he kept being dedicated to the idea that he will not use this land for anything else but to build a Roman city. So the owner is very dedicated, and this is our guarantee, and as such is a flexible guarantee because he might change his mind. So we need to work with him, and it can be something magnificent. We don't know, but small things like this may just become what really brings our mission to fruition.
Sure. Before we touch on some other of the projects that I just mentioned, I just want to briefly jump into the chat, because we're very grateful that people are watching and also contributing. One question from Tiberius Julius Nerva is that he would like to know how you first met the current consul Sextus Lucilius Tutor from Marcomania.
Mm-hmm.
Only thanks to him I am in Nova Roma.
Yes, I met him in person too, not once, but several times. But I met him first online when Marcomania was still part of Pannonia. Marcomania, we call Marcomania the Czech Republic and Slovakia territories, and it was originally part of my province, my home province, Pannonia. centered in Hungary currently, because Hungary is the active part of it. And when Sextus Lucilius tutor joined Nova Roma, he naturally met me as governor, as the responsible person for his area. So we immediately talked and started to chat about philosophy. Tutor is very dedicated to Stoic philosophy, and we talked about this a lot. Back then, we had a Yahoo group for the Pannonian province, and he subscribed there, and we had nice talks, both in private and in the forum. And there was the 2009 Floralia, yes, I think 2009 Floralia, where I invited citizens from abroad. It was a public call that I invite every Nova Roman to come. And he decided to come with his girlfriend. And this was the first time when I met him. And he stayed in this place where I am now, in this home, in my house, with his girlfriend. And ever since, we are in a very strong friendship, and we often talk with each other by phone. We even went together to Bulgaria to an event, to Plovdiv. The governor of Thracia, Aulus Vitellius Celsus, Vladimir Popov, organized a fantastic, mind-breaking, great festival in Plovdiv. And this is where Tutor and I and some other Nova Romans went together. We performed their programs. We held a ritual for Nova Roma together. There are photos on Wikipedia, and maybe also on the website, some photos about this event. And that was another week we spent together, and it was amazing. Almost every time we talk or meet each other, we remember that festival in Plovdiv. It was epic. So these are my personal experiences with Consul Sextus Lucilius.
Great. There is another mention in the chat from Georgianos. You mentioned his Roman name earlier in the
Domitius Draco.
Okay. And he was responding to the question about rebuilding on site or off site, and he understands, and he would also be conflicted. The only thing, though, is at the very end, he wrote, on the other hand, Rome itself is sacred. Its sites are sacred. What is your view on this? Because obviously, ancient Rome had a pomerium. So they had a boundary between the sacred and the non-sacred. However, Rome was destroyed. So does this pomerium still exist obviously you could go traverse Rome and you would have no idea where it exists unless you had a map in front of you. But do you think it still exists in some way today?
It's a fantastic topic, and one can argue for and against all day. So it's very really. I often think about this, actually. My official answer would be that it exists, but it is damaged. That's the compromistical answer. It exists, but it is not in unincorrupt state. So if Rome was ever to be restored as a state or some kind of entity on its own, because Rome is now an Italian city, just like any city in Italy, even if it is the most special and really full of sacred and valuable historical and artistic monuments and such. It is still a city just like any other Italian city. But if Rome would ever be restored as a part of some kind of a Roman state, which would, let's suppose, be based on Roman religious formulas, Roman religious context, then I think it should be definitely resacrated. The pomerium should be re-established, but not a novo, not from nothing, but this ceremony should be a restoration, not creation, but restoration. So this is my view, that it exists. It is in a damaged condition, and if a community wants to use it, it has to restore it. I actually performed some kind of rituals in Rome among the ruins, even before I met Nova Roma, and also after, when we were together with then consul Titus Domitius Draco, who is Giortanos in the chat. He participated in some of those ceremonies which we made there. So there were steps already made in that direction, but I am most firmly convinced that we must be humble in the current state where we are. We are not. This is why I never advocated for such a move that we call ourselves Roma, not Nova Roma, but Roma, or we call ourselves Roman Republic or Res Publica Romana. We are just not that. That is a huge thing to claim, and we are not that huge, of course.
Yeah, because I'm actually also big into coin collecting, and there are various examples, both during the Republic and during the Principate, of coins, not only of, for instance, an emperor or somebody else doing the plowing for the ceremonial ritual of founding a city, but there were also there's some coins with an emperor or another person plowing where there was already a city. So I think the coins would be more symbolic, but the plowing is central to founding a Roman city. And at least through the coins, it seems that you could have do the rituals, and then many years later, if something happens, you could rededicate the city.
It happened many times. It is an actual historical fact that existing cities were refounded in location for some reason.
Do you think, but since the city also existed, do you think they redid the plowing, or maybe they enlarged the city boundaries? Because obviously, if you have, for instance, if you did the plowing along the Pomerium, currently in Rome, you're going through buildings and streets. So, I mean, obviously, in ancient times, the cities also grew.
I don't know the answer for that, unfortunately, but it is worth research. In my opinion, based on parallels, based on similar things I read, I would say that if plowing happened, it was symbolic for 5 meter long something.
Really?
So that, of course, Romans were big masters of using symbols and loopholes in the sacred, so to speak. So they could say that this is a temple, it's a glass, but if they performed the correct rituals and they declared it a temple, it could be a temple. In Rome, the Roman religion worked like charms in magic work. So they believe that pronouncing certain formulas are more important than the facts themselves. This is, for example, how the Roman Republic never died. It was so deeply interwoven into their thinking that religion is law, law is religion, both are the same, there are no separate law and religion, that and things are never unchangeable, nothing can be changed ever. They always use just loopholes. The Roman Republic was always, when even in the dominate, it was still called the Roman Republic. They believe they live in the same form of state, but they had some extra rules, extra legal mechanisms to empower a person to rule as a king almost.
No, it's
But
not.
they didn't change the constitution ever. There was no written constitution, of course, but they didn't change the republican laws. But it was just played. They were just played with. So that it's very, very likely to the system of the British monarchy. There is no constitution there, and if we just strictly read the laws, it seems that in Britain nothing has changed since the Middle Ages. Yet everything has changed, but not in form. For example, who is the first man after the Queen?
Prince Charles.
The Lord Chancellor. Technically, in legal terms, the Lord Chancellor, but of course the Prime Minister is leading the government. But if you just observe the forms, the laws, and the hierarchy and the rituals that they do, the first man in after the royal family in the kingdom is the Lord Chancellor. I bet that 99.9% of the British don't know this. Is just it is just a ceremonial thing, and but for those British who are deeply involved in this, lawyers and those who study constitutional law or are involved in the ceremonies, for them it's very real and very important still, but decreasingly. In Rome, it was a larger class of people for whom the ceremony was important. In today's Britain, ceremony is really important only to a very thin layer of people. In Rome, it was the entire elite who watched with watchful eyes whether those forms that are inherited from 500 years ago are strictly observed. So even if it showed, especially in the Principate, even if the emperor was technically like a pharaoh almost, when the consuls entered, the emperor stood and saluted them, and so the forms were, in terms of formalities, the Republic lived on, and this is when I join back to the beginning of this section, this topic, that if it was religiously in the rituals called, this glass is called a temple, and it's established, it's consecrated as a temple. For a Roman, it is a temple, and period. It doesn't matter the shape and form and what is it used for.
Now, I have a question. Since Pannonia is one of the more active provinces, and especially in Budapest, well, modern Budapest, in the former town of Aquincum. When you speak about rituals, can you let us know what sort of rituals are performed these days in Aquincum, and also how those differentiate from the reenacting events that are also going on there?
Well, they normally and usually happen the same time, and they are the same thing. The only difference between real Roman ritual and reenactment ritual is that reenactment ritual is a make-believe. Well, I'm not sure if this is the correct English word. Is just a performance, and the prayer that they say, they don't mean it, and they are probably said in the context of a certain past scenario. For example, a reenactment ritual can be a prayer for the health of Emperor Claudius. We don't offer prayers for the health of Emperor Claudius because he is dead. We may offer a ritual for the divine spirit of Emperor Claudius, because that would be absolutely appropriate. Although in Nova Roma we do less of the imperial cult, but it's technically free to do, so no, it's not forbidden. So when a reenactment group, any reenactment group, performs a ritual, it's normally and almost always not intended as serious. The text of the prayer is about fictive or past things and they don't pray for actual living people and actual living communities, and maybe also the forms are not very seriously studied. How to the formulas and the prayer gestures and the parts of the ritual are not very seriously researched and done according to the expectations of the Roman religion. A real ritual differs only in these aspects, that when a Nova Roman ritual is done in a reenactment event, it's for the Nova Roman community. We often pray for the magistrates, the priests, and the inhabitants, the Nova Roma members of the region, of the area where it is performed. or for specific causes, for anniversaries, for certain festivals, and always for the benefit of the members of Nova Roma. So these are real prayers, always with real content and intention. But for the audience, the museum visitors, the festival visitors, it's not apparent. And to be honest, it doesn't have to be apparent. It's not their business. They don't know Latin anyways. So whatever the prayer is in Latin, most of the people wouldn't understand anyway. So it doesn't make a difference. We are not obliged to explain why we use that certain verb or word or noun or adjective. It doesn't need explanation. And it's very practical because it satisfies two communities completely at the same time. The visitors who receive a very good performance, how actually a Roman ritual looked like, and then the participants of the ritual who are spiritually satisfied that they could celebrate in a Roman location, if it's in Europe, usually in an actual Roman location, among actual ruins, praying for actual goals, for actual objectives, and together in community and amidst a crowd, which was always part of Roman rituals. So they just exactly look like and function like real Roman rituals. I couldn't imagine, at the current state of being of the world, a better way for a Roman to celebrate anything than in a reenactment festival, because Roman holidays, celebrations, were festivals, and they are not meant to be done behind a back alley or in a back alley in a narrow street somewhere, hiding so that people who walk on the street may not be disturbed, or in a closed garden or somewhere. Roman rituals are meant to be celebrated in pomp, in crowd, with harsh and colorful decorations. So the gods are pleased when they see this, and of course, sure, they appreciate a small event as well. But Roman gods are not Christian gods. They are not. The Christian God is about the soul and the inner good, which is a very nice idea. But Roman religion is not about these aspects. The Roman religion. I don't want to. It's a different topic, so we could talk about that too. But I close this at this point. What I wanted to say is that Roman gods are not so understanding about low performance than the Christian God. Roman gods are not the God of mercy and suffering and reconciliation and forgiveness, but they want what is theirs: pomp, worship, processions, sacrifice, honors, crowds. And this is a Roman ritual in public terms, because the private religion is different. That can be humble and small.
There are a lot of comments in the chat, and we're gonna get to those in just a moment. But just to follow up, because actually I was scrolling through on your personal YouTube account, and there is a video from, I think, 2017. It was the 19th anniversary of Nova Roma, and it was at night with fire. And I believe in the description you were in the former amphitheater, or in the ruins of the amphitheater there at Quincum. And I was wondering, is that done regularly? And also, what are the different types of rituals done in modern times?
Well, we do, not just in Pannonia, but in many provinces. We do rituals as part of festivals, real reenactment festivals or city festivals, or if there is an occasion that is sponsored by authorities, like macronational authorities. And we also do private gatherings, which are not private in the Roman sense of the word. They are not private religion. They are religious events of the Nova Roman res publica, but they are private in terms of our macro-national realities. So it's not hosted by a museum or a archaeological park or a city government, because we, in brackets, I say that not only archaeological sites organize festival, we participate sometimes in, for example, a wine festival, and many people fancy Roman banquets when they think about wine, Bacchus, and the traditional Roman banqueting as a typical thing to think of in context of in terms of wine. So we had many invitations to do something Roman style in a wine festival, and it has nothing to do with the reenactment event. But we, as reenactors, go there and, for example, make a legendary drill performance and offer a ritual for Bacchus, for Liber Pater, and this is also something that I would categorize as in context of macro-national authorities. And there are those which are absolutely on our own initiative. Those, unfortunately, always must be humble, because it is rare that we can come together more than 10 when it's not a paid festival, when we are financed by museums, because people live everywhere in the country. Their travel is cost, their participation is cost. Sometimes they have to take off a day. They have to ask permission from their bosses to come. So it's difficult to come together more than 10 people. So when this is another thing why reenactment festivals are ideal for Nova Roman events, because participants are, or at least organizers are paid compensation for the travel costs, for benzene, gas, for we even get food, for example, sometimes, or accommodation. There are festivals when you are accommodated in hotel rooms. So those are they make possible for even people on a budget to participate. But when we just hold an event on our own, it is on our costs, and possibilities are limited. The video you saw was such a private event, which we organized on our own, because there is no festival in that time. The next one is on March 1st, the greatest holiday of Nova Roma, the Foundation Day, Concordialia, holiday of unity among all modern Romans, the holiday of the festival of agreement, concordance, and this celebrates unity among Nova Romans and unity with Nova Romans and other modern Roman groups on the world. And we petition Concordia to give us unity, strength, endurance as a unified community to move on towards our goals and to celebrate our funding. And this is also going to be a private event. It's always private, because in Hungary there is nothing in 1st March in museums, so we can only celebrate it as a internal event. I'm not sure if we can hold a real gathering in Pannonia. At least we are still discussing it, but if not, I always perform a ritual either in our garden in another city, because in Budapest we don't have, but in another city we have a garden. I perform rituals there, or in my home. It's also possible, and hold a ritual. And since my wife is a Nova Roman and a magistrate as well, it's always there is a symbolic crowd always. So to do a ritual alone is the less pleasant thing for the gods. There is always it starts really when there are 2 persons present. That's the real start. A celebrant and an offering person.
So unfortunately, we have about 40 minutes left, and there's so many topics I want to cover. I mean, this has been so fascinating. I just briefly want to go through the comments. since several people contributed about some religious aspects before we jump to the next topic, because like I said, there's so many things I still want to cover. So Georgianus, you said that he's Senator Draco.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote the difference. So regarding reenacting or rituals is for lack of a better word, belief. A regular reenactor doesn't believe it is a true prayer, it's an act. A cultor will believe it's a prayer to the gods. Hortensius says that no, one is done with purpose and action. The other is a mere performance. Sempronius mentioned, but should the audience know that they are actually observing, participating in a real religious ceremony?
Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't. When I lead such an event, I decide on an occasional basis, based on the atmosphere, how much I disclose, and based on the importance of the event. For example, when it is a very big anniversary, I often preface the program explaining them that it's an actual celebration of our anniversary as a reenactment group. I say this because this is simply understandable. I don't talk about a reconstructed Roman Republic and the community of the Roman nation revived. This is too much for an event like this. I just say that we are an international reenactment organization with groups all over the world, and we celebrate our, for example, 14th anniversary, which will be this year, and we dedicate this ceremony for this occasion and for our better future and for the inhabitants of this city and for the workers of the museum. And everyone, I don't know if everyone, but people usually are pleased to hear that, and they say, how nice, it's kind. So it's appreciated by the audience.
And Sempronius also mentioned that in Australia, they're expected to advise the visitors or spectators if they're actually observing a real ceremony. So, there's no confusion or anything like that. And Sempronius also donated afterwards 100 bits to the channel.
Thank you.
So we're very appreciative of all of that. Okay, so very fascinating items. So leaving that aside, there's an earlier comment from, here, let me just find this comment now, because I don't want, it's from Horstensia Faustina. She wrote that she really loves Romanitas, Latin philosophy, literature, history, and worship of the gods. And she's currently in Ukraine, in Templum. So can you, and like I said, we don't have that much time, but briefly just state how Nova Roma and Templum are working together.
Yes. Well, it's an interesting story, and I try to be very concise on this. Templum was founded by Nova Romans and in frames of Nova Roma. But actually, I was one of the founders. I traveled there and I consecrated the area as a templum together with Marcus Lucretius Agricola Augur. He inaugurated it, and as Pontifex, I consecrated it. And we three, Corvus, the owner of the land, of the territory, founder, and Agricola Augur, and I as Pontifex, we three together laid the foundation stone of the templum.
So you went there in person,
and it was in the ritual dedicated as part of Nova Roma, never owned by Nova Roma, but in terms of legal status within Nova Roman law, it is a Nova Roma temple. It is still so. That is a temple of Nova Roma, but it is not owned and was never owned by Nova Roma. However, there was an intermezzo in our story. And I'm at the risk of being boring, I again must cite the name of Sulla and Caesar, who were very unpleasant as a company, and Corvus didn't want to be associated with Nova Roma as long as they are ruling the organization. And so he and his family and many Ukrainian members who were connected to the Templum project quit Nova Roma in those years when Sulla and Caesar were in power. However, they rejoined just this January. So again, they are Nova Roman citizens. But the temple remains to be owned personally and privately by them, and I think to some degree by the donors of the templum. So this is our legal connection. Our cooperation, however, even during the years when they were formally separated from Nova Roma, was very good. I worked as a kind of chief advisor for rituals, ceremonies. I wrote many of the prayers that they use at the Templum complex in my function as pontifex. I wrote the prayers, composed them based on ancient Roman prayers, actualizing the text to the needs of the occasion. There are rituals performed for birthdays and weddings and all sorts of private events by Templum, and there are rituals performed for the Templum community, and there are rituals performed for Nova Roma. The next such will be on the calends of March, when Corvus, the manager of the Templum, and Hortensia Major Fabiana Faustina, the plebeian aedile and flamen of Nova Roma, will officially together perform 14th anniversary big ceremony sacrifice for Nova Roma in front of the Jupiter temple of Templum. So there is a very close cooperation, but it's important to emphasize that they are a separately owned organization, and it's led by Corvus by their own decisions. And Nova Roma Nova Roma doesn't have jurisdiction over decisions made by Templum. They are independent, but they are part of Nova Roma.
Well, it's interesting because next month I'm going to be interviewing Hortensia Faustina, so I could go into more questions about the Templum project and also the Orbs project, which is having people live there, which is also interesting. I believe she's the first, but they have plans for various properties there and for Roman citizens across the world to live there. So that'll be interesting to get, her firsthand insights into those. And the last project I remember reading about is in Maine. There's a property with, I believe they want to recreate a Roman, I think a camp or
fortress.
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 What is the status of that right now?
It is in the plans, nothing more. The land is owned by Marcius Vulpes, a citizen of Nova Roma. He started the fundraising campaign, but it is not fully fledged at the point. We haven't yet conducted a fundraising campaign officially, but he started some donations to collect, and I know that he collected somewhere around $200. So it is not in that stage, and he also was a little bit disappointed in the reaction to his call for donations, and it's a difficult thing because when someone considers how ambitious and great the idea is to build a Roman camp, our immediate reaction is, well, why not to put together some dollars, and if we all put some into it, it can be easily built. But people don't work like this way. It's a ideal scenario, but it doesn't happen. People are reluctant to give even $5 to projects. There are so many campaigns everywhere to raise funds, and so it's very difficult to to find the right angle from which to approach it. And it is his life dream, the dream of Marcus Vulpes, who wanted it to do it together with Nova Roma as part of Nova Roma. And we want it very much, but we just can't force people to donate.
So I remember hazily some of the pictures. So what are the structures that he wanted to build? Like, was it a palisade wall or a stone wall and some barracks inside? Or
If I remember correctly, it's wooden, only wooden, the entire forest, with some camp buildings, some for the legionaries, and the tower maybe was the part of it. It was designed by Sempronius Skepsis Agricola from Australia, who was quaestor last year, and he helped a lot to Marcus Vulpes, and they put together a good starting um, um, representation material for this project, but it is yet to be started officially. And we also need to have Marcus Vulpes to be on board with the idea that donations will not just be coming quickly and in great amounts. He has to accept that it's a long-term thing, and maybe he will decide that he does it on his own. So it's up to him. Nova Roma is working with him, and we will see how it turns out. So it's now an official project, but we are not in the position to have actual results at the time.
Yeah, because in the last 18 years I've been in Nova Roma, I've seen hundreds or thousands of ideas of projects, but there's a big difference between having an idea and executing it, and also how much one has to be in charge of one's own project rather than say, oh, okay, I have an idea on paper and all this money will flow in and that's great, rather than somebody taking the initiative and be like, no, this project is happening. It's being built, and then the donations come. I believe with the Templum, that's also I'm not exactly sure, but once they built the temple and they had altars and they had rituals, people could, I don't know, they feel more of a connection, and it's easier to donate and participate in a project that's ongoing rather than that's just on paper and it hasn't started yet. So I'm hopeful that things will develop. And I've also lived in Maine for a time, and that's the first instance where I've met a fellow Nova Roman. So I found the idea very interesting. So we'll see how that develops. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time, so I want to go into two topics before we slowly start to wrap up. One topic is your travels. Now, I'd like to know, so which Roman museums and ruins you've traveled in the world, or you visited in the world? Because when we spoke in Budapest, you mentioned that as a reenactor, you go to many places, but you go there to participate. You don't go there to really sightsee. So what are some of the ruins and the museums in Hungary, but also outside of Hungary, that you've been to so far?
Wow, it's difficult to make a list. Not so many. I haven't been so many museums that I would feature it as one of my virtues. I'm not there yet, but definitely I want to. I always want to, and I'm very interested. But as you said, when I go to places, it's usually part of a festival, and there is no time for sightseeing. Maybe we can see the ruins, but not with a guide, not even with my own guidebook or tourist book to go through each thing, but just a quick walk around the site and to take some photos. So I'm in the interesting situation that I was in many places, but I didn't had the occasion to immerse myself in these experiences. But I was in Rome about 10 times, maybe
Nice.
eight, and sometimes for 2 weeks or 3 weeks even. So I know Rome very well. I was everywhere in Rome almost, but I always end up in the Forum Romanum.
It's
That is,
interesting that you say almost. I've been there 11 or 12 times, and every time I go there, I repeat things. But every single time, I've done a few new things.
yes,
So,
this
for
is how I
instance,
do it.
because sometimes you'll have like a museum that's been closed for many, many years and it reopens. For instance, the museum right next to the airport with the Roman naval ships has been closed for many years, and they've just reopened it. I think the end of last year or beginning of this year. Or there's also some the terminus of a Roman aqueduct that is near the Trevi Fountain, and that's also new to the public. And last time I went to Rome, and like I said, it's right next to it's very close to the Trevi Fountain. So I mean, it's an important place for water, for thousands of years, and that just reopened. So it's nice to, and also to go to some palazzos with some Roman collections. So it's always something new in addition to something old. But what's your favorite part of Rome? Like, I don't know, is it the Forum where you could just stand there for minutes or hours and just be overwhelmed, or is it maybe the Capitoline Museum or the Vatican Museum, or what's your favorite spot?
Definitely, it's the Forum. The Forum around between the Curia and the Rostra, where the Comitium was, and where Cicero, Cato, Caesar, the Gracchi, the Scipiones, and all those fantastic Romans that made up the Roman Republic with their body, with their collective persona, all touched the earth, all their voice, their sound resonated in this location. This is overwhelming to me, and I always have the feeling that I can't believe that I stand on the same spot where Scipio or Scipio stood, and Cicero and Caesar, and these walls heard those speeches, saw those events. But to tell you a more interesting one, because this is so trivial, maybe because it's so obvious. A Rome fan likes the center of Rome, ancient Rome. What is interesting in that? I tell you one that is more interesting, but it's not my favorite place, but one of the favorite places. When you walk up the Capitoline Hill, there is a parking spot. When you go upwards from the Forum, next to the porticus of the Deconsentes, if you know what I mean. There is the Arch of Septimius Severus. You turn left and you walk next to the Temple of Concordia, the Temple of Vespasian, and there is then a turn right upwards to the Capitoline Hill. There was the porticus of the Deconsentes, and then you are once up on the Capitoline, and the first thing that there is, this is not the official entrance to the Capitoline Hill, that's the other side. This is the back entrance, and there receives you a humble parking lot. In that parking lot, in front of you, what you first see when you arrive upwards, there is a building, and on the building wall, there is a little fence, stone fence, a triangular little stone fence, not larger than two tables or a dinner table. Okay, let's say this is a reference, like the size of a dinner table. This fenced, stone fenced area, and there is a big hole there. And if you go there, you can look down and you see the ruins, the remnants of a corner of a building. It's very not interesting for anyone who doesn't know things very well, but it is nothing else than the only remaining part of the most sacred, the highest, the Vatican of ancient Rome, the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus. It is still visible from outside. And I think
I
that
didn't know that.
very few people know that you can actually see the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, the chief temple of the entire Roman Empire.
But but it's not, you don't see the temple, it's the foundation though, right? Because for instance, in the Capitoline Museum, you see part of the foundation so underneath the museum.
Yes,
but you don't
it
actually
is
see
the
the
same.
temple.
It is the
The
same.
temple is above.
It is the same construction. While it's part of the temple, I'm not sure whether this is the part where already the columns started, or just the part where the stairs of the stairs that lead up to the.
Sure.
I don't know that.
Okay.
I identified it, but I don't remember whether it was which exactly part. I believe it is. It is probably the part where which was, as you said, the foundation, but not the part where the stairs were, but
The retaining
the
wall.
part where is the square
Sure.
square structure upon which the columns stood. I
I'll
think that
definitely look into that.
the same continues in the building, so you can see, if you look inside, you can see that those walls go into the buildings, and I saw it out from outside from the building, so you can follow with your eyes the same construction going under the building. It was very interesting for me because it was not visitable, if I can say it this way. It was not possible to be visited for many years. Now it is possible to be visited from inside, so you can see even more from the temple. But for many years, nobody could see that, just those who were archaeologists or those who were insiders of the Musei Capitolini. I wasn't, and all I could see for years and years after each my visit, during each of my visits, that this little corner of the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, and I always went there, and I always offered a sacrifice there, and it was I would say that this was my special place to go. And it is not interesting, it is only interesting if you have that spirit and you watch it from that attitude.
So, like I said, a few more questions before we slowly get to the end. Do you have any places the next few years that you would like to visit? For instance, I mean,
Pompeii and Naples, definitely. I have never been to Pompeii, and it's
oh no,
Mhm.
that's going to be a wonderful. That's
Yes.
going to be a wonderful time, because I think I've been there about 6 times, and every time you go, you have sections that are closed, and you have sections that are either open for the first time, or that have been open, that they reopen after 5 or 10 years. And I was actually there in September, and I went into some new houses in Taberna that were only discovered a year before, and they just opened a few weeks before. So Pompeii is one of those places that you could easily go every couple of years and see brand new, or not brand new, but for you, new villas and houses, and that's going to be an amazing experience. And also Herculaneum and Oplontis, those are also very highly recommended, even though many people just go to Pompeii. But there's actually 5 different sites combined that one could visit. So also nearby, that, yeah, definitely a great. I'm just trying to think. There are some temples, but I don't think though you could go inside any of the temple structures themselves. But obviously, you could see the altars and see the temples from in front of you. Well, that's great. Another question I have is, how did you get interested in the Latin language? Because you were one of the Latin speakers in Nova Roma, and I'm just curious, how your interest in that developed, and how you became proficient in Latin, because obviously Latin is not an easy language to be proficient in.
My interest in Rome was the starting point. I fell in love with Roman history around the age 9, if I remember correctly, or 10. after watching the movie Quo Vadis with Sir Peter Ustinov from 1951, and the pictures, the sights, the atmosphere of this movie captured me very much, and from that moment on, I was always fascinated about Rome. And the next thing I did was to read Quo Vadis as a novel, the original novel, and then to read more Roman novels, and then to read children books about Rome, and introductions, and then serious books, and so on, so on, so on. I made myself tunicas and togas, and I made myself helmet from an old bowl. I painted it to look it metallic. I attached it to feathers to it, and I made armor from cartoon paper. If I don't know, it's the cardboard. Maybe cardboard is the English name. Cardboard. I painted it to look like real, and so on and so. So this is how I started. And when I was in the age of 14, I was at the point that those childish activities didn't satisfy me anymore, and I started to borrow very serious books from the library, including a book on ancient architecture. I actually have purchased this book some years ago. I didn't see it for many years, but it's somewhere
Vitruvius?
here. And it's a fantastic good old book, but fantastic good summary about all ancient architecture from Mesopotamia to Greece and Rome. Fantastic, very good book. And in that book, there was a guide to pronounce names, Mesopotamian, Greek, Egyptian, and Latin names at the back of the book. And I read that guide because just wanted to take a look, especially for the Eastern names, which were very frightening. These Sumeric and Assyrian names. And while I looked on that guide, I noticed the guide on Latin names, and I was smiling. I know how to pronounce Latin because there is a normal traditional pronunciation in Hungary of the Latin language, where we pronounce Caesar as Caesar, Cicero as Cicero, or Horace as Horatius, or Germania as Germania. So we have a mixed version here for centuries. That is a very, very traditional thing that was here for 1,000 years. And I obviously believed, I had no reason to doubt that this was how the Romans spoke. And in the book, there was a warning that be aware that the Romans didn't speak this way. They pronounced it as Kaiser, Cicero, and I believe that I'm getting a heart attack. I was terrified. Cold sweat was going down my neck, and I believe that everything is destroyed. That the mighty Caesar never existed. There was a funny sounding guy, Kaiser, like a German sausage type, or I don't know. So it was so alien. I was so dismayed that I went to the library the next day and started to ask for the stuff here, whether there are books on the history of Latin, because I can't believe that the Romans pronounced their names this way. And there were some books on the history of Latin, so I started to read them. These were very difficult for a kid of my age. These were language history books for linguists. But I didn't spare any time and energy. I read them twice, 4 times, 5 times until I understood to the linguistics and the evolution of languages. And after the 5th or 6th book, which derived and with many evidences proved how they knew how the Romans pronounced their words, I had laid down my weapons against this, and I accepted that the Romans spoke an entirely differently sounding language than we in Hungary pronounce the Latin words. And but when I arrived at point, when I reached that point, I already unavoidably acquired some Latin words, get used to some Latin words and some grammar rules through this process of reading about the original Latin pronunciation, and I started to understand the system. So I thought that, well, I am a Roman. I want to be a Roman, and the Romans spoke Latin. So why on earth I'm not studying Latin itself instead of just reading about the phonetics of the language? So I collected some Latin books and started to learn Latin on my own, and this is how I learned Latin. Later on, I studied it in the high school, but first I didn't go to a normal high school. I went to a cook school. My grades were not so good in elementary school, so I was not qualified to high school, classic high school, where in elevated our numbers students learn history, mathematics, and literature and things like this. But I went to technical middle school first, where restoration, confectionery, cooking, this was the profile of the school, and these things happened during that year, and I became a good student thanks to this research, that I studied Roman history, that I mined myself, that I got myself into linguistics. My brain was better conditioned, so to speak. I became a better student, and my teachers were so kind and caring that they advised me to go to a real normal high school, a classical high school. And when I went there was, and that school was Latin as a subject, so I took that. But at that point, I was very good in Latin, so I always take pride in the fact that I learned Latin myself. So this is the detailed story of how I got into Latin.
Nice. So, like I said, time is running out. We might be a few minutes over. Now, in the Facebook announcement about the interview, there were a few topics mentioned about. So how could it happen that real people hail you for a victory as imperator and award you a real triumphus, as one does to the generals in the ancient Rome? So can you? So earlier we talked about the whole, the whole Civil War, and it's very complicated. So we don't have to go into the details of what exactly happened during that time. But can you just briefly touch about the end of it? Because the declarations of triumph was actually very recent. So long after Caesar and Sulla left the scene.
There were some loose ends to tie. How do you say it in English? There were some loose ends to work out, and this was delayed due to the coronavirus and some illnesses, deaths, and all sorts of things. And to be honest, I think many of us just enjoyed that we are doing real business for the first time in many years, and we were not so keen to solve the end of the Civil War, because most of the things were all right already. So why not just enjoy our time in Nova Roma and organize events, go to festivals, hold meetings, and work on new rules. And so it was not a priority, and many people tended to let it delayed a little bit. At the end, it was everything was solved, and to put it very shortly and simply, this Imperatorial Salutation, which was a very common thing, so it's not, nobody mistake it for crowning an emperor or so things like this. I can imagine that those who, for example, who don't like my silly face, they would say that, oh, Lentulus, emperor. No, nothing. There were hundreds of generals who were greeted as imperators. It's a normal victorious salutation, and it is authentic due to the fact that when this kind of internal conflict started, those who signed on as plaintiffs, as activists to save Nova Roma, were organized as part of the legions of Nova Roma, mostly in my own reenactment group, the 21st Rapax, the Legio Vicesima Prima Rapax, but some others as well. For example, Domitius Draco was proconsul and ceremonial commander of the legion 24th Media Atlantica, Legio Vicesima Quarta Media Atlantica. And so these were commands with Imperium, with activists who worked, campaigned, participated in various ways by debating, donating, organizing resistance against the Sulla and Caesar coup data, which were. So they were actual warriors assigned to actual legions under an actual commander with Imperium. And there was an actual victory. So some of them were so kind and flattering to us, not just to me, but a number of those who were the leaders, that when Caesar quit and announced that he has given up, and when Sulla admitted his defeat, some people made this acclamation, imperatorial acclamation, to Publius Porcius Licinus, to Titus Domitius Draco, to Sextus Lucilius Tutor, and to me. And I hope I didn't omit any names. I think these four of us. And the Senate sanctified it with voting on that as imperators in ancient Rome received a solemn procession to celebrate. This is what they donated to all of us: a solemn procession to celebrate this victory. And we can actually do it because we have the legions, we are festivals, and it will be a nice program. But it will be a costly one because the Senate doesn't give the money to make it. And if I want to celebrate ever any of these triumphal processions, I will have to create all the things that are needed to this. So it's a burden. It's a very much an honor, but it is also a burden and a big loss of my wallet money.
Yeah, because in ancient times, there's a lot of wars of aggression and expansion. And for instance, when they celebrated triumph, they brought gold back from all these countries. So it's pretty much flaunting the wealth and showing off what you gained. The only thing though is obviously there's a bit of a difference between ancient times and modern times. In ancient times, to be awarded a triumph, you had to be victorious over non-Romans, and you had to expand the physical boundaries of the Roman Empire. And I believe there's also Roman laws, laws that deemed when you could have a triumph, or at least I'm not sure if they were laws or more of just practices when triumphs were followed. And also same thing with the civic crown, which you were also awarded. So obviously in antiquity, they also had certain characteristics and requirements to get that. Time is running out though. So let's go to the last portion, which is more of the show and tell portion, before we end. So can we start off just very briefly with your tunic? And I'm not sure if it's a colored toga or cape. Could you just describe what you're wearing right now?
Yes, I am wearing a tunica angusticlavia, which means narrow striped tunic. This is the narrow purple stripe. This is the equestrian tunica, because I'm member of the equestrian order of Nova Roma, and I have the right to wear this. And on it, I wear a toga, pulla, which means dark toga, which is worn during grief or during great distress to show kind of grief. And since my pater familias died, where there is no specific thing like offering a sacrifice as pontifex, for example, or to chair a gladiatorial game as governor in a reenactment event. I always wear this. I don't know how long I will wear it, but my heart is still grieving. So I fear I have this compulsion. I have this feeling that I should wear it until I can fully say goodbye to that kind of grief or sorrow. I planned to wear it only for a year, but because there are not so many events to wear it outside my home, a year, it feels less than a year. So I want that I have the full feeling that it's closed, the proper time has passed, and I don't wear it after it. So it's actually a so-called classical toga, with the three parts that are not seen on reenactors except Gaius Petronius Stephanus Turpilianus, who is called Stephen Cockings in his modern names. He is the other person on the word whom I see wore it correctly. It consists of a so-called umbo, a part which is coming from under, and a sinus, which reaches the knees and is a separate movable fold. And it's not easy to learn how to wear it. So it's no wonder not many people are wearing it.
Did you make it yourself or did you purchase it?
I made myself and with my family all my 40 Roman clothes.
Oh, wow.
And I am not a clothes maniac, but these are Nova Roman clothes, in fact. Members of Nova Roma who participate in events and don't have their own clothes, I give it to them.
Oh, wow. That's very generous of you.
Well, it's kept in my property, but anyone can use it who needs them.
And so, yeah, I remember seeing the pictures of the funeral. Even Praeconinus, who lives in northern Germany, he drove down to the funeral to participate with you. And unfortunately, we don't have time to really talk about that, but there's plenty of pictures online. So, I mean, I've never met the individual, but it's very interesting to see his funeral because he was in the member of the armed services and also a prominent Nova Roman citizen. But like I said, we don't have time to go into that, unfortunately. So the very last thing that I wanted to bring up was I asked you in advance if you could show a few books and Roman objects around the house and briefly describe them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I choose not to select Roman objects because I don't have Roman objects which are very interesting. I have some coins. I have some fibulas. That's all.
We all have history.
not special, and I choose not to show them. But I selected three or four books instead.
Sure.
What would have been interesting, but I didn't think of it to show my Roman clothes, but that would be another type of video presentation. So I could show how to dress up into each type
we
of
could
garment.
easily do that on another stream.
Yes, it's a possible topic for another stream. So instead, I just selected some books, and I selected books which are at least most of them which I show easily available to anyone and can be used to propagate to advance the Roman cause very well.
Sure.
First, sorry, I forgot. I didn't put it on my table, but I selected in my head, and it is here. Well, don't be surprised. It will be shocking because you expect something more special. It's in Hungarian. But you can purchase it in English because originally it's in English language. It's the Usborne History, the Romans. I proudly confess that I think that this is the best book ever to be acquired about Rome as an introduction. Absolutely wonderful.
Is it more of a kid's book?
Sorry?
Is it more of a kid's book?
More of a kid's book, yes, but I would give it to any adult person to learn about Rome without it's not written in childish tone at all. It's not written in childish tone. It's a serious introduction, absolutely good for adults. And I show, for example, I learned everything in Rome when I was a kid from this, and absolutely detailed, very realistic maps of
Nice.
ancient Rome, explanation of what kind of how is constructed, what is the system of a basic Roman city, any Roman city, with detailed explanation of the types of buildings, detailed explanation of how an insula looks like. It's not for simple-minded children. Any
Sure.
adult can use it proudly, and it's more detailed than any book I have ever seen about Rome, which is of a popularized type of spreading education.
Sure.
Domus, private house. Yes, the private house of a Roman, and this book comprises everything. Absolutely, I would give it to every Nova Roman citizen who is not a Rome expert but a fan of Rome and doesn't have expert knowledge about everything. This should be our introduction to Rome. You can learn from it how to put on a toga. How many books show you how to put on a toga? Actually, I learned this. I know two persons in the entire world who wear the toga normally, and I learned from this book. Anyone can buy it, but nobody learns from it. Of course, you need a little bit experimenting, because if just I saw the pictures, it was not enough. I had to do my work, my homework, so to speak. But just a second. Or Roman furniture. These are all very, very accurate drawings. Very, very accurate. These are drawings, not photographs. That's negativity. But
Yeah,
nonetheless,
but wooden furniture doesn't preserve that well.
how to put on the toga.
And even hairstyles.
Yes. In
Well,
this book, there is everything Roman. So someone needs to know about Rome. It has a history part from the kingdom through the Republic to the fall of the empire. There is a part about military, the ranks of the army, the government, consuls, quaestors, absolutely everything that is Roman culture on an introductory level in this book there is, with drawings that are historically accurate and based on actual object. Usborne is a good trademark anyway of spreading knowledge, but this is absolutely stellar. So I wouldn't be ashamed to give it an adult anytime.
Well, it sounds like that maybe we should post that on Facebook. Maybe on Nova Roma.
I'm afraid it's no longer sold because it's this edition it was made in English language much earlier than the Hungarian edition, and the Hungarian edition is dated to sometime at around 1995 or so, 1994. So it's very old, but
Sure.
I just wanted to show I learned many. So this is the basis of what I know today. Actually, this was my Rome 101, ancient Rome 101. The other is more fascinating. Just a second.
Sure.
The most beloved books in my collection. These are from 1730. So these are 300-year-old book edition of Quintilian, the greatest Roman rhetor. Rhetor, do you say this way? The teacher of oratory, rhetorical master.
I'm not sure.
Quintilian, teacher of oratorical skills. How do you say it in English? In Romans called them rhetors. R-H-E-T-O-R.
Hortensia said in the chat rhetoric, but
rhetoric. The word comes from that. Sure. And I got this as a present from another Nova Roman citizen, and he inherited it through many generations in her family. this citizen is called Livia Plauta, and his father was a famous literature figure in Italian literature and theory of literature and philosophy and things like this. And when he died, she inherited his books, and it is Italian edition from Italy, from Roman soil, from the 70 30s. And why I am specially connected to this because Cicero and Quintilian are two of my two favorite Roman writers, and Roman oratory is one of my favorite areas of interest. And this is the holy scripture of Roman oratory. This is the book which uniquely, among all the extant resources, describes in detail how to clothe, how to follow fashion as a Roman, what style of togas you should wear on what occasions, how to fold the folds, how to fold the draping of the toga, and it served basically as the same function actually as it helps a modern person to know how to be a Roman and what is Rome, how does it look like the Roman culture. This served in times of the Roman Empire as the basic introductory textbook to become a Roman public figure, speaker, member of the Senate, a magistrate, because here oratory didn't just mean in ancient times the skill to speak publicly, but it also meant basic knowledge of constitution, laws, the structure of society, and everything. So after these were written, every Roman who wanted to be a senator or just even practice law or appear in public should have had to read these. So it's another quintessential book of mine.
Sure, you're making a good advertisement for him. I've heard about him, but I've never read him. So that is something that I should definitely look into this year. Well, thank you so much on that.
And my third and final book I show is another thing that connects to these books that I had in my hands. This is here. As you see, it's the same. I don't know if I see it in reverse in my monitor, but it's also written Quintilianus. This is the Hungarian translation, and I participated. This was translated to Hungarian for the first time by a group of scholars, and I was part of the group, and I translated to Hungarian one of the 12 chapters of Quintilian.
Oh, wow.
And this was my first published work as a scholar, and I'm very proud of it, and I consider this as one of my contribution to Living Romanitas in terms of wider academic and educational service. And as my first published book is my favorite, and is from the author whom I admire the most, who was one of the most important authors. And I'm just bragging basically that I partly I did this too. Well, so these are the selected books I show.
That's amazing. I mean, I know that there's various Nova Romans that have published works. I mean, and that's amazing that you've contributed to the translation. And also, it's so fascinating. I really like the fact that all the books you showed, I don't have in my library. So, and I have many books. So it's interesting just to see, a few snippets in your library, and also to, hear your thoughts and perspectives. I mean, we could easily speak for a few more hours, but unfortunately, this has been going a little bit over time. And so unfortunately, we would have to end it here. I have to say a huge thank you to Decimus Aurelius Ingenarius for doing all the technical aspects. I mean, he is in, I believe, in Eastern Australia. So, I mean, it's the middle of the night there, but he very generously offered his time and expertise. And I really don't want to keep him up anymore. I do have to say a huge thank you to you, Lentulus, for participating, for answering my questions. I mean, we could have easily spoken for a few more hours, and maybe we'll do another interview session where we could focus on a few different topics, or focus on Roman clothes, or literature, or this or that. Maybe we could definitely do something in the future. It'll be a lot of fun. But once again, thank you so much.
And thank you so much for organizing this interview and for taking me on board, and for your questions and patience with me.
Great. Well, thank you to everybody in the chat. It has been a wonderful time. I hope you really enjoyed the stream. And I hope you have a great day. And the next interview will be next month with Hortensia from Ukraine, or in Ukraine. So good things to come from that as well. And hope you have a great day. Take care.
Valete. Valete.
Valete.